Okay. All right, guys. Thank you guys so much for bearing with us. So, we have everybody on board again, and I'm not gonna talk bad about that platform, but y'all don't leave your Zoom subscription because Zoom always comes through for you. So again, thank you guys so much for being with us, and we are going to be talking to Symone, our social worker. So without further ado, Tracy, can you go ahead and ask Symone your first question?
So as a social worker, what is the most challenging thing about your job?
Um, let's see. The most challenging thing would be working with the systems that we have no control over. So, of course, I'm working directly a lot of times with the client and trying to find them resources and things like that, connect them to the services they need. Um, Unfortunately, sometimes there's not enough services to go around, or they may not qualify. They're right above the threshold for like income or housing, different things like that. That would be really beneficial. There's guidelines in place. So trying to navigate those systems, be creative, use your resources. They come in handy, but that's like the biggest thing. We don't make the rules, we just have to follow them. So oftentimes, clients are frustrated because they can't qualify for a program or do different things. And I would love to give it to them. I tell everybody, if I have a magic wand, everyone would get one, kind of like Oprah, you get a car, you get a car. But yeah, unfortunately, it doesn't quite work like that. So just trying to be creative with the system is the best thing I can do.
But what do you mean by the system? Do you mean that you have to build relationships with different organizations and see what they can possibly offer a client, and like that build different,
It's a
partnerships like
combination.
that?
So part of it is if a person needs housing assistance, knowing what programs they could qualify for, what they don't qualify for, what's moving fast, what's moving slow, what they can maybe qualify for in the interim until their housing works out. If they have income, helping them get income, knowing how to work Social Security. So part of that is asking a lot of questions so that you can learn the system, and leaning on, senior social workers or doctors, different people who know the system. And it's multiple systems. It's not just one thing. Like I may be an expert in Social Security, getting people that, but somebody else is an expert in housing. So just using those folks as resources for applications. If it's a 45-page application, hey, how do you fill this out? There are some that are
What?
There are some that are like 25, 30 pages. So trying to
Uh-huh.
figure out what's the easiest way to do this, or can I fax it instead of mailing it? Like little stuff like that, trying to navigate it to make your life easier too, and make sure the client's needs are met.
Okay, okay. So now one thing that I remembered that we did not do, I'm telling you, we know everything about Tracy and Portia, but we do not know about you, Symone. Can you just tell the viewers just a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. I am a licensed clinical social worker. I currently work for a managed care insurance company. So, pretty much when someone is having any mental health struggles, depression, they're suicidal, maybe they need detox or anything like that, my company authorizes and provides the service. So, they pretty much pay for the treatment you're going to get at the hospital. I also have a private practice, Expanding Your Horizons LLC. I do clinical supervision. So for people who want to become social workers or professional counselors, they have to have supervision. So I do that, as well as individual therapy. And I am an author. So I wrote The Life and Legacy of Lear Green, which is my godmother's memoir. She's now 97. That's a little bit about me. And I really enjoy cooking, anything food related, and I enjoy traveling.
Nice, nice. And I'm really glad that you mentioned that you are also a business owner, yourself. So, that's what Portia was also telling us, that she wants to be an accountant, but she also wants to own her own business. So see right there, Portia, Symone is actually, still working for another company, but she also has her own business as well. Tell the viewers, Symone, though, how do you juggle both?
Oh my. I like to tell people I maximize every minute of the day. So sometimes that means like eating lunch while I'm working on one of my personal projects. That also means giving myself time to take a break. So I just went away for a couple of days, kind of refresh my mind so that I can edit my next book that's coming out in a couple of months. So I try and set time frames. I'm really organized. I have boards all over saying, okay, this is the time to do this. This is the time to do that. And also being kind to myself. I say that all the time to clients when they're having a hard time, but I have to remind myself, you have a lot on your plate. You're doing a lot of things. You're helping a lot of people, but sometimes you need to step away and say, relax. That's going to get done. It's not a priority. And taking a couple of days to just binge watch a couple of shows on Netflix or, go to the beach for a day to refresh my mind. But I really try to maximize every hour of the day and then get to bed at like 9 o'clock.
But that's really good that you mentioned being kind to yourself. That's so good. I'll tell you, you are a social worker. I can at that heart.
Yes.
So now, what about you, Portia? What question do you have for Symone?
My question is, did you grow up wanting to be a social worker, or did something happen in your life that made you want to choose that profession?
Oh, good question. I did not want to be a social worker. Ideally, when I was in high school, I knew I wanted to help people, right? What does that look like? I said, oh, nursing, nurses make good money. They can find work anywhere. So I can be a nurse, right? When all through high school saying the same thing, I went into school undeclared or undecided. I don't know which one they call it now, but I didn't think I would get into the nursing major. I didn't have a strong science background. But I said, I work hard. I'm determined. I'm going to be a nurse. My first day of chemistry, I called home and said, no, I don't like this. This is bad. I really hate it. Pushed through, tried to do anatomy the next semester. I really was miserable. And I knew talking to different people, social workers don't make money. This is all you're going to do. All the negative publicity around social work. And then I toyed around with a couple classes in undergrad, just trying to find my way. And I took a career development test. And it said something along the lines of social work. Still was in denial, but I took the intro to social work course. Fell in love. Oh my gosh. It was like an epiphany, the light bulb, everything that you see in the movies. I just fell in love with the profession. And from there, I kept learning. I kept networking. I went on to get my master's. And I just found that, that was my passion. Everything about social justice and helping people and advocating. That's like where my heart lies. So I just said all the naysayers. The person who told me I wouldn't make any money asked me like, oh, can I borrow some money? I said, no, I'm a social worker. Remember, I'm not going to make money.
That's right.
Remember that. But, I always tell people now, it's always money to be made. So find out what your passion is and run with it.
That's good. That's good. And one of the posts that I posted about a week and a half ago, I wanted to actually look at, like the median salary of a social worker. And it was saying that you all make around $50,000. And, you don't have to say yay or nay, Symone, but I do. I really like what you said, Symone, about money is out there to be made. One thing that really helped me to have a better understanding of what I'm passionate about and doing my best at is if you are the best in your industry, you are going to be making that top amount.
Yep.
Not to say to go in that industry thinking that you are going to make that top amount, but when you are working to be the best, you are going to be the best, and your income will also be reflective of that. So, Symone, can you just tell us, what does a typical work day look like for you?
Typical work day. So I can start my day anywhere from 7 to 9:30, and I'm working from home now, so that's great. I log onto the computer, I check voicemails, I check emails to start my day to kind of see what happened overnight. Since I work for an insurance company, it's not as pressing. Some issues are not as pressing. I work primarily with the homeless population, helping them with maintaining supports while they're in housing. So check emails, I'm calling. There's about each person, I'm a team lead at my job. So each person has like 3, maybe 400 people that they oversee. So we look at grids and we see who's in the hospital, who do we need to call and do what we call a review to see if they still meet what we call medical necessity. Do they still qualify to be in the hospital? I'll do those reviews. I call supports, ask how each person is doing, get an update, offer more supports. That's kind of like a typical day, but there's always things in between. So I may get an email and say from a landlord, this person didn't pass their inspection. They have holes in the wall, roaches all over, things like that. Then I'm going to call their housing support and say, this is what's going on with John Doe. I need you to jump in. Then I'm calling the case manager to say, this is also what's going on. I need you to jump in and I need you all to update me. So a lot of my job is coordinating the care for individuals who are in housing. They have mental health or substance use challenges. So if people stop taking their medication, if they relapse on drugs, then it looks a little different how they're going to do in their housing.
So now what's the difference between a social worker and a case manager or caseworker?
In order to be a case manager or a caseworker, you do not have to have a social work degree. Sometimes they have like psychology degrees, sociology, anthropology, work history, anything like that. Social work is very distinct. We have something called title protection, and it varies by state, but I'm in Pennsylvania. So if you have a social work degree, you are a social worker. When you do not have a social work degree, you can classify with other professions. You cannot call yourself a social worker unless you have that degree. Similar to a doctor. You can't walk into a hospital and say, I'm a doctor if you don't have a medical degree.
Right.
So we really fought for title protection. Put a little respect on the profession. Everyone wants to be a social worker, and you see the things that happen in the media with like child abuse and all of those cases and workers not doing what they're supposed to do. But those people are not necessarily social workers. They just get grouped together. They may have a background in another field.
Got you. That's good. Thank you so much for that. So now, what's your next question, Tracy?
So what type of boundaries do you have with people that you work with?
Not answering the phone at a certain time, that's for sure. That's a big one. Taking my lunch, that's very important. Making sure I step away from my computer. When I was in the office, I would go for walks, to clear my head. Taking my vacation time. My coworkers laugh at me. I'm good for a week vacation on an island somewhere every year. Taking my personal days, making sure that my medical is together, going to all of my appointments. That's kind of what I do to create a balance, and also making sure that when I'm done work, so I can come home and be present. So I still make dinner almost every night. I want to watch a movie. I want to read books. There's other things I want to do. So just trying to make sure I maximize my time at work so it's not spilling over into my home life and my personal life.
So now, I think you heard her say balance, but she actually asked boundaries. What type of boundaries do you put on your clients that you work with?
I don't share certain things about myself. So I'm young. If you see me, I'm young. I don't tell my age. I minimize my self-disclosure, what I'm telling about myself. If it's not necessary for treatment, I don't tell. Hopefully, I haven't had to block any clients yet, knock on wood. I've heard of cases where people call and call and call. I work more directly with like hospitals, so I don't have a lot of client contact. And if I do, it's with a third party. So Jane Doe would be calling me with their case manager, and the case manager has my number. So I don't really worry as much about them calling. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. One question I do have for you though, just as a human being, and because you are in the field of being a social worker, we know that you are very compassionate towards people. What about those clients that really tug at your heart and they like, Symone, I really just need to be able to get in touch with you. Like, what does that look like?
So I always direct people to like the crisis center or anything like that. If it's an emergency, you have these phone numbers, you have, 911, you have all of these resources that's available 24 hours a day. Unfortunately, I am not. Sometimes it's really that simple. You don't want to sound heartless, but you also don't want to burn out and become overwhelmed. So I let people know, hey, I usually work 8 to 4, sometimes 4:30. After that, it's going to be the next day. If it's an emergency, these are the people you can call. Unfortunately, I'm not it. don't mean to be mean, but you have to set some boundaries because clients will call at 8, 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night saying, oh, I want to talk. No, not with me. Not that time of night.
That's good. So now what's your next question, Portia?
My next question is, what are some advantages and disadvantages of being a social worker?
Some of the advantages, you can always have a job. You can always have a job. You can always have multiple jobs. Right now, I have 3 outside of my private practice. So you can always have a job. Sometimes you can pick up a couple of hours here, a couple of hours there, and mix and match. I like to say I'm tapping into all areas of my life. So I like being able to advocate on an organizational level, which is my full-time job. But I like the direct care because I still want to keep my skills fresh. So that's one of my jobs. And then I like being able to train and teach. So that's why I do the clinical supervision. So you can do a bunch of different things, and I still may only work 45 hours a week.
Oh,
So,
wow.
most people work 40, and I can pick, do I want to do 45? Do I want to do 55? So that's one of the advantages, especially if you move up and, get a master's and get licensed, you have a lot of options. For people who want private practice, some people work 20 hours a week and make enough to live. So there's a lot of different options for employment. Benefits are typically great when you work full time. You have better benefits as a social worker. Pay fluctuates depending on the organization, I'm going to be honest. But that's something I like. I like the flexibility. So a lot of jobs, if you're in the field, you can do something on your break, or if you're with clients and you have to take them to the market, you can grab something for yourself. So you just find ways to be creative. There's no reason to go to the market and you need, soap and not pick it up. Just doesn't make sense. Some of the disadvantages, have to say the system and just not having enough resources to go around, housing, food, all of those things. And I had something else for a disadvantage.
That's okay. If you
Yeah,
think
it'll come
about
back.
it, you let us know. But talk to us just a little bit about how it was how long have you been in this industry as a social
I've been
worker?
a social worker. It'll be 10 years this year.
So talk to us how things has changed for you, for going and starting as a social worker and now what it looks like. Because one of the things that I struggled with personally was I had a goal in mind to become a retail buyer. And what a retail buyer is, when we see all of those different things in, like, say, a grocery store, there has to be a buyer that purchase those from the different vendors. So I wanted to be a retail buyer, but I had to start at a entry level job, which was not a retail buyer. I saw different things that I didn't enjoy, and I said, this is not for me. But in hindsight, meaning in the future, I realized I should have stuck with it. So talk to us about how, yes, you may not like certain things in the beginning of your job, but when you stay with it,
Mhm.
then when you move up, things may and can change for you.
Um, when I came out of grad school, I took a job just because the job was available, and a lot of people want you to have experience. So I felt like I need to take a job, student loans, different things are going to kick in. And I was not paid anywhere near what a master's level social worker should be paid. And I was also licensed. But again, you do what you have to do to get to the next level. Did that for almost 2 years. And then I had a big jump in my salary when I went to the next position. So just even learning that sometimes it's growing pains, that you have to kind of stick with things, even though the salary is not what you want, the job wasn't ideal, but it was great experience. I was an assessment worker for, they call them area agencies on aging. So when you have older adults, usually 65 and older, and they need different services, whether it's moving to a nursing home, they need a home health aide, meals on wheels, as we call it here, somebody to like bring you food every day. We do the assessment for that, and we determine what services they qualify for. And I didn't need to have a master's for that. I could have just had a bachelor's, but I did that. I learned a lot. I networked, and that kind of helped me along in my career, and just being patient and having time to, get certifications and things like that. It helped me grow. So that's one of the things I appreciate. And I'll tell anybody in the beginning, it's not always going to be a bed of roses. Sometimes it's hard to get where you need to be, and it may take a couple of years, but remain committed, continue to learn, continue to grow, and it's going to happen for you.
That's good. That's good. Thank you for that. So now I know that you mentioned you work at a hospital. Where are other places a social worker can work?
Almost anywhere, a school, medical hospital, psychiatric hospital. You can have your own private practice, work out your house, nursing homes. You can work in child welfare agencies. So that may be any type of Department of Human Services. You can work in a juvenile justice system. You can work in the courthouse. You can work in the corrections. I know social workers who are corrections officers. goodness, it's the options are really endless.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's one of the advantages too. If I get tired of this, I can do that.
Yeah.
You can work for medical insurance. You can work for psychiatric insurances. You can do consulting work. So if you're really, really good in your field and you want to, let's say trauma, you're an expert in trauma, you can just go travel and do consulting work.
Okay.
And they pay you to come and you just teach people.
Okay. Okay. So that's where the teaching aspect would come in at. Okay.
You can be a
That's good.
professor. You can be a professor.
That's true. I didn't even think about that one. So now what's your next question, Tracy?
Have you ever met anyone that you couldn't help?
That's a good one. Symone, like, no, I can help all of them. Do you know me?
I mean, you can give resources, but I've met people who didn't want the help. I'll
That's
say
good.
that. I'll say that. So you can always say, oh, here's a phone number, or here's a food pantry. But some people are angry, they don't want it, they curse me out. And I just, okay, here you go. And keep it, and kind of keep it moving and hope at some point they'll come around, leave your contact information. Or maybe they need to come around. I see that a lot in a psychiatric hospital. People are mad. They're there against their will. They don't think anything's wrong with them. And, I've been called quite a few things, Negro social worker. I don't want to work with the Black social worker. And I have to, I'm the only brownie here. So it's either me or you don't get discharged. So which one would you prefer? And then people come around and they talk nice, but some people are just resistant. And part of social work is understanding that people have something called self-determination. We don't have to agree, and it doesn't have to be in their best interest, but they have the right to say whether or not they do this or that. Even with medication, somebody who's hearing voices, they have the right to say, no, I don't want to take my medication. We don't agree with it. We don't support it. But as long as they're not a danger to themselves or others, there's not much you can do about it. You can encourage them. You can try and educate them about the benefits, but it becomes hard when people can do so much better, but they don't want to follow the recommendations for whatever reason.
So I'm really glad that you mentioned that there are, environments that you go into where you are the only Black social worker. What does the makeup of your field actually look like? Are there not a lot of we're going to say Black, are there not a lot of Black social workers or females or males? What have you seen?
Everywhere I've worked, there has not been a lot of males. And Black males are few and far between. I can probably count on one hand how many Black males I've worked with. Not as many Black social workers. I've joined a few organizations like Association of Black Social Workers, where they kind of help us with our issues and different system barriers and things like that we experience. But there's not a lot of us, not maybe a third, and that might be generous. And it also may depend on your environment. I have a feeling that child welfare social workers in Philadelphia, they may be more Black than, I don't know, inpatient hospital social workers. I don't know. I think it also depends on the field. Some people have more of a niche towards one way versus the other. But it's not too many of us here.
And how did you become, well, let me ask you this. Did it affect you at all that there weren't a lot of Black female social workers?
No, I think going to school, and I went to a predominantly white institution for undergrad, and then another predominantly white institution, or what we call the mainline, right outside of Philadelphia. So it's a very prominent area. Going to those things, I saw who my peers were. And in undergrad, it wasn't too many people that looked like me. So it kind of prepared me for the idea, okay, it's probably going to be like this normally. And grad school was the same thing. It was maybe 3 or 4, 5, maybe. So I knew, and then internships, you get to see the dynamics at different places, and you start preparing yourself. Okay, I may be the only one, or I may be called this, or people may not want to meet with me because of this is how I look. And trying to cope with that early on versus, getting my feelings hurt once I'm in the field.
Definitely. If you're just now tuning in, you are watching Today I Want to Be Career Exploration interview. We are talking to Symone Miller. She is actually a social worker. If you have any questions for Symone, make sure you go ahead and post them in the comment field. If you're watching from any other page other than Martinique Y. Brown or Today I want to be, make sure you come on over to one of those two pages, and then I can see your questions and comments, and I can relay those to Symone as well. Or if you're tuning in on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, make sure you go ahead and post your questions and comments there. So Portia, what's your next question?
My next question is, what are the qualification or skills needed to become a social worker?
So initially it's just, I don't want to say just, but it's a degree in order to be called a social worker. I encourage people to look at getting licensed. There are some states that do bachelor's level licensing, master's level licensing, and then beyond that, there's at least 2 years of field work where you're just working in the field, doing your everyday work, and you receive supervision, and then you can get a what we call a clinical license. And it all depends on what route. There's a ton of certifications, whether it's mental health, whether it's some like kidney specializations. There's some in medical specializations, trauma, different types of therapies. There's so many, I can't even name them. So I encourage anybody, once you get the degree, figure out what your specialty is. You know, everyone doesn't want to do mental health. I understand it can be a lot. Some people love corrections or they love the legal system. Then look into a certification that way.
Okay, so you're telling us it's better to go to school. What would we be majoring in if we wanted to become a social worker?
Social work.
Okay, so we get our social worker BS or BA.
BS, it depends on the school. It could be a BA or a BSW.
Okay, so BS stands for Bachelor of Science and BA stands for Bachelor of Arts. So we get that, and then you recommend we figure out what field we want to go into specifically.
Mhm. While you're an undergrad, if you major in social work, you will have to do an internship. And part of the internship, you'll hopefully be able to talk to your advisor to figure out, I kind of think I want to work with this population, and they'll try and place you there.
Oh, okay.
I thought I wanted to do it at a jail. I did a tour. No, thank you.
Mhm.
So it gives you an idea. I ended up doing it at like a women's resource center. Or if you're interested in not working directly with people and you want to work with organizations, I did a stint at the United Way. They help do fundraising for a lot of community organizations. So you don't have to directly work with people. You can work with organizations. You can work legislative. So when you go to Harrisburg and people are advocating for rights and policy changes, social workers do that.
Mhm. Okay, so we did our internship, and
Mhm.
then after we graduate with our internship, you recommend that we next go get our license in that specific area, correct?
Or you can get a master's.
Okay, so we can do one or the other.
Or you could do both. So you can get your bachelor. It's a lot of nuances. Sorry. You can get your bachelor.
I thought I was done.
No,
I just
you're
got my
never done.
degree.
Never. You can get your bachelor's. You can go out, work in the field, do case management or something else. A lot of times, if you want to make more money, you want to get licensed, you want a little more freedom, you go back to school to get your master's. You
Okay.
get your master's, you have more internships. That's like the best time to learn, the best time to make all these mistakes.
Mhm.
Just naturally, you're going to make mistakes. This is the perfect opportunity. You learn, again, you find your niche. Depending on if you're in a 1 or 2 year program, you can do one internship or two internships. You know, it's recommended that you do different ones to get different experiences to see what you like.
Yeah.
Then you can qualify for another license after you graduate. And I'll leave it there for now.
Got you, got you. And that's the reason why I'm so thankful that you're here on the show, just so you can, just give us ideas on which route to go. But definitely, like Symone was saying, you have advisors
Mm-hmm.
specifically if you're already in college, or if you want to go to college, your advisor will really be able to direct you in that right path as well. So what's your next question, Tracy?
Have you ever needed any type of social work in your life?
I have not. I have not. Let me say it again. I could have benefited from social work more on a therapy level, where somebody to just sit and talk with me when I was 11. My father
Mm,
died unexpectedly, and because everyone was processing, the grief, and the funeral was like 3 days, so like it was really quick, and then everyone went back to normal. I could have used someone else to talk to outside of family.
that's a good question, Tracy. What's your next question, Portia?
Is there one case in particular that you just won't forget that you've worked?
Yes. My first job, well, my first psychiatric hospital job, I worked with a man. He was homeless. He came in with a slew of concerns. He was stable and it was time for discharge. He had no housing, he had no family. And because it was right outside of Philadelphia, they didn't have any openings at the shelter. So usually if someone doesn't have anywhere to go, you can set them up at what we call a community mental health clinic. They do walk-ins and, they have to take everybody with or without insurance. But this gentleman didn't have anywhere to go. He didn't have any money. He didn't have any income whatsoever, no family, and there was no shelters. Then I learned later on, he couldn't read or write, like the bare minimum. So we were going to send him on public transportation to Philadelphia, which is where I live, to a Philadelphia shelter. But how do you get on the bus if you can't read the sign?
Mm-hmm.
So we found this out as we were preparing, towards the end of discharge. And, the insurance is not going to pay beyond a certain point. So everyone wants to push him out of the hospital. But my good conscience said, well, what do you do? He's not going to make it. Like, realistically speaking, if you can't read the signs on the bus, and maybe it's a letter, does he recognize letters, numbers? Like, it was so much confusion. He's not going to make it safely. And that didn't sit well on my conscience. So when I told him, hey, you have to go to a shelter, this is what we're proposing, before I even realized, that he couldn't read or write, he was upset and said, okay. But then he walked over and picked up a chair and he slammed it against the wall, the window, and he broke it. I kindly walked to my office, excused myself out of danger. And at that point, I was like, oh my goodness, he's really scared. And I understand the fear. Like, Philadelphia is not the easiest place to come to, especially if you can't read or write, you have nothing. He's just going to be homeless on the street. So I called a friend of a friend who rents rooms, and I asked for a favor. She charges money, obviously, to rent these rooms. She's like a group home. And I said, listen, this guy doesn't have anything. I need a favor. Can you help me? And because I had networked with her and worked with her in the past and made other referrals, she said, for you, yes, you can send him to me. Make sure he has a prescription for his medication, and I will work with him. I will feed him. I will clothe him until I can get him Social Security. And she did that for about 1.5 years.
Oh, wow.
And eventually his Social Security came through. But this is an example of, I knew a resource and I used it. Now, I won't use it for everybody, but this was a really extreme circumstance. So I asked for a favor. And it worked.
That's good. That's good. That was a really good question, Portia. So now let me ask you something, Symone. So what would you tell your younger self?
Don't listen to the haters. Please don't listen to them. That's like one of the first things I would say. People are not always supportive of my dreams, especially early on. When you say social work, again, people think you don't make money, and it just has such a bad reputation. So I would say, don't listen to people. Follow your dreams. Don't be afraid to step out on faith. If you know it's good in your heart, then you can make it work. Like, you're smart, you're resourceful. I know I can make it work. And I wish I would have listened to that earlier on.
Now, if you guys don't know this already, but I actually all of the professionals that we interview each month are actually featured in the Today I Want to Be career exploration products. So if you have not purchased any of our products yet, what are you waiting for? You can definitely go to that link in the description box and you can actually check out some of the products that we have. But Symone really wrote some really good goals as well as words of just affirmation in her her products as well. So make sure you check out those products, because I'm just saying, the products are very inspirational, but they're only inspirational because of the featured professionals that we have, like Symone, and she's just really encouraging each week because those are the goals that she has actually set for kids and youth who actually have the products as well. So what's your next question, Tracy?
Why do you think some people don't reach out to get help even though they know that they need it?
The stigma. So social workers don't come into your life because you're doing well most of the time, right? They come in because kids are truant, they're not going to school, or there's some type of neglect, potential abuse. No one welcomes a social worker because you think they're going to do great things. You shy away from it because you think you're going to take my kids, you're going to be in my business, you don't understand. All of those things come up. And then within the mental health side, there's a stigma associated with talking to people in general, especially with people of color and Black people. You know, oh, I've heard so much like, I'll just go to church. I'm like, well, Jesus made therapists too. So you
That's
want to talk to
good,
me?
Symone.
You know, I think there's a stigma associated with, I don't need this. I'll be okay. My faith will keep me. And all of those things are accurate. I don't take anything away from that. But I also think certain people was put here to help. So the stigma with, oh, I'm not crazy. You hear that all the time. And it's like, no, we all need a little checkup every now and again. Even therapists, like sometimes you need to sit on the couch and work through your own stuff. And no one is exempt from having to talk to people. I always say, you know, you could go through a stressful period, like the pandemic. If this is not stress, what is? You have people, you know, losing loved ones. You have people having babies. You have people, relationships breaking up. Like everybody's house isn't safe to go to. So there's so many dynamics. You have the political climate. You have racial tension. There's so much going on right now. Everybody could stand and sit on a couch, call somebody right now. And it's easier sometimes to talk to a professional. You don't know me. You won't judge me. I don't have to hear about it later on. You know, if you talk to your friends, they may bring something up and you, oh, I kind of told you that in confidence. I didn't want you to bring that up. So definitely the stigma, and you know, social workers aren't known to be proactive and help you out before things kind of get bad.
So now, is there a website that we can go to? Like, let's say, for example, I say, you know, Symone is right. I do need to talk to somebody. Is it like a national website or a number that somebody can call? Because you know how they had the suicide line. Do you guys have something like that?
There's a few different ways. If you have insurance, you can look on the back of your insurance card and there's a number there. And you can call them, and they have a member services or like a customer service department. And they can sometimes, well, most of the time, I know my job, they're available 24 hours a day. And you can say, hey, I need somebody to talk to. And they'll ask you specific questions like, are you interested in a particular kind of treatment, like trauma treatment or, you know, stress reduction, anger management, whatever, specially, or maybe you just say, hey, no, I don't know. They may ask you the area you want it to be in, and they give you a few providers. So they may give you hospital A, B, and C based on the things you requested. And that's what your insurance will pay for. You could go on like Psychology Today and a bunch of these other websites, but then you have to play the insurance game.
Got you. Okay. So. And so Psychology Today can be a good step for somebody to go to if they did not have insurance, like just want the first step.
Yes.
Okay. So now, Portia, what's your next question?
Do you see yourself being a social worker in the future, or is there like, or would you want to like retire from social work and jump into a different field or profession in the future?
I could see myself being a social worker forever. And it's funny to say because I get bored easy, but because I can do a lot of different things, I'm still in the field. So I want to do more advocacy work, but that's still a social worker. So I can do it in multiple ways. And that's another reason why I like the profession. If 5 years, in 5 years, if I say, I don't want to see clients anymore, I'm burnt out. Well, guess what? I can do something in Harrisburg, or I can do something for an organization. I'm still doing social work. Or I want to teach. I want to be a professor. I can go do that, assuming they hire me, of course.
Definitely. So, ladies, you definitely all ask some really great questions. So now let me ask you this last question, Symone. Why did you want to be a part of the Today I Want to Be products?
I really wanted to be a part of it because I know the stigma associated with social workers, and I know representation really matters. Seeing people that look like you in the field, sharing positive stories, not just on taking kids or, you know, putting people in the hospital, just having some positive experiences. And I think I have some things to offer growing up in Philadelphia and just seeing how the system can work and knowing that there are some positive aspects of it. I wanted to be able to share that with people and know that it is a career option. You know, you don't have to fit into the stigma. There's an option. And if you want to help people, especially that look like you, which is why I got into the field, I wanted to see more social workers that look like me.
That's good.
I wanted, when I go to therapy, I want a therapist that looks like me. Just to be honest. I've seen so many kids, and kids don't want to talk to you. I went home to see kids and they say, "Oh no, I'm not coming downstairs, mom." And then they peek down and they say, "Oh, is a black girl? Is she young?" And I say, "Yes, sis, come on down." You know, and then I can meet you on your level, opposed to when I'm sitting with a CEO. I might talk a little different, but we can talk about music and different things, and I can relate to you, so you may feel a little more open.
That's so good, Symone. Girl, that's so excellent. And I'm definitely thankful that you were able to really just be a part of our products, and not just a part of products, because that just sounds so like formal. But I'm really thankful that you just a part of the Today I Want to Be family, just because, you know, like you said, I typically hear about social workers just taking kids and that's it. But I know you all's hearts, you know, and I know that you are all the backbone to making this, you know, just society a more livable and sustainable place for people that society has just pushed to the side.
Yeah.
And so I definitely thank you for everything that you do. Thank you for that. I only learned about the word self-care until I talked to a social worker, but I thank you. Yeah. And I thank you for just realizing that you have to really, you know, take time to have your own self-care so you can continue to really just help individuals that sometimes just can't help themselves. I thank you all as the viewers for taking time to watch another episode of Today I Want to Be Career Exploration interview. And I see you got something else, Symone. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, if anyone is interested in learning more about social work, just some of the core basics, you can check out my website, www.authorsymonemiller.com. And I'm also coming out with a social work book within the next few months. I think we talked about this like last year or something. So it's coming out. I'm editing it now. So it'll be out in the next couple of months. So if you're interested in learning more and kind of more of the nitty gritty, then, you know, please take a look at it.
Definitely. And make sure you connect with Symone through her social media handles as well as her website. And all of that is listed in that description box. We do have 2 interviews coming up. We are going to be interviewing our business owner, who is a Black male, and his interview is going to be on February 11th. We'll also be interviewing our Black female pilot. Her interview is going to be February 18th. If you are interested in being a co-host like Tracy and Portia, make sure you go to that link that's in the description box and sign up to interview them as well. And then you'll also see all of the professionals that we'll be interviewing as well. Make sure you also check out our career exploration products. So you can really just start those conversations with your students, with your kids, and the youth that's in your life. Also, follow us on social media. All of those links are listed at the bottom of that description box as well. We definitely hope that you guys have a great night, and we will talk to you all later.